Frank Collada. Frank, you grew up in Chicago,
That's correct.
and you had involvement with the Chicago mob, which was called the Outfit, Chicago Outfit.
Yeah, we refer to it as the outfit.
Yeah, and your father had a similar kind of path as you, right?
My father, he never wanted to be a gangster. He was a thief. He was a killer. He was all of them things, but he never wanted to be controlled by any organization back then. It would have been the syndicate or the outfit.
Right. And tell me about your childhood. You grew up with a mom and dad.
Yeah, I grew up. I had a sister. She was 5 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was 9 months pregnant with my brother when my father died. So my brother never got to meet his father.
Oh, wow.
And she was a very good mother. At least, I know everybody thinks their mother's the best. Well, I feel as though my mother was the best.
Yeah.
A woman visited me every day, every Sunday in jail for as many years as I did, since I was a kid.
That's great. Tell me about your father.
My father was, he was not a bank robber, but he would do it, I guess. He did a lot of robberies and burglaries. He was more or less a good wheelman, getaway driver. That's what his reputation was. How I knew all of this stuff was because of relatives used to tell me as I was growing up, and his friends, my father's friends. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known that stuff. I just knew my father when I was a kid had a violent temper, and he was very providing for the house. Mm-hmm. Very good. He hollered at my mother a lot. He was very jealous, but very much in love. Mm-hmm. And I love my father. To this day, I still love him.
He's Italian. That explains a lot of it, right?
He died in an automobile accident. He was killed. He was being pursued by the police because he had, back then they used to call them gas stamps, rationing stamps. And he had a carload of them. He just had been sentenced to 8 years in Des Moines, Iowa, because he got caught out there. I think he was set up. So he was out on some type of an appeal bond, and he had more of these stamps in his car. And he took off, and he got killed in the car accident.
Hmm. And there's the connection between your father and so you met Tony Spalato, who is the infamous Chicago mobster, when you guys were kids, right?
I guess Tony Spalato and myself met at a very young age. I'm assuming he was about 12 years old, or maybe 11, somewhere around there. It's been a long time, but it was around there. And my mother finally sent me out. She says, "You got to start, go make money. Here's a shoebox. Make a shoebox." So I made a shoe shine box, because I was stealing out of paper bags before then. I was climbing up the pole and reaching in the bag, grabbing nickels out and running. Finally, the guy started chasing me.
That's how they sold newspapers back then.
Newspapers, yeah, there were newspapers. It was on your honor. You drop a nickel in and take a paper out. Well, I dropped my hand in and took all the money out.
Yeah.
So I, finally start chasing me. So that's when I start shining shoes. And the main street in Chicago that I hung on and been up and down all my life is a street called Grand Avenue. So I'm on one side of the street and I hear a voice yelling at me, "You're in my territory, get out of here." And I look across the street and I see a guy that's a little shorter than me. So he starts walking towards me, I walk towards him. He says to me, "This is my territory. You need to get out of here or I'll bust your head." And I look up at the street sign and I said, "I don't see your name. What's your name?" And he says, "Spalato." I said, "I don't see your name on that street sign, and I'll be back here tomorrow." And he said, "Well, when I come back tomorrow, I'm busting your head." I said, "I'll be back." So the next day I come back, for every day for a week or two. And I didn't see this little guy with this bad attitude. Then one day I heard, "Hey," because he had asked me my name when we were arguing on the street. He said, "What's your name?" And I told him, "Collada, Frank Collada." So when I seen him after a week or two, he yelled to me again and we met in the street. In the middle it was streetcars then, so we stood by the tracks. And he said, "I gotta ask you a question. What was your father's first name?" And I said, "Why?" He said, I just need to ask you and I'll tell you why." I said, "It was Joe, or Joseph." He said, well, you and I are going to be friends the rest of our lives. And I said, why? What's the reason for that? And he said, my father overheard me talking with my brothers about a guy I was having a problem with, shining shoes in my territory. When he heard the name Collada, he says, he called me in the room and he said, find out if that boy's name is that boy's father's name is Joe. He says, because if it is, you and him, I gotta be the best friends from now on, because his father saved my life. And that's what Tony told me in the conversation. And I said, then I come to find out what took place and how my father saved Tony's father's life. Tony's father's name was Patsy. Tony's father had a restaurant on Grand and Ogden. We refer to that as the old neighborhood. It's up northwest. So it was called Patsy's Restaurant. And he was famous for his sandwiches, his meatball sandwiches. What I come to find out is my father went in there like everybody else around that area to get food and spend money there. Patsy told him one day, he said, hey, Joe, I'm having a lot of problems with these grease balls. My father, grease balls back then meant the black can. That was the only thing around then. There was no Al Capone, no Tony Accardo. So my father said, well, what are they doing to you, Patsy? And he said, well, they come in, they collect. They want to collect from me every week. Taxes, to stay in business. He said, I can't afford it. He said, I'm just a little businessman here. My father said, what day they come in? And I guess he told him the day. My father says, I'll be here that day before they get here. In your back, the kitchen. Do you usually bring them in the kitchen when you give them money? He said, yeah. So my brother says, all right. So the following, whatever the day was, he came in with two of his guys. And they waited in the kitchen. So when this guy come to collect money from Patsy, Patsy brought him into the kitchen. Well, they got him in the kitchen, my father and his other two friends, and they killed him. Patsy wasn't in the kitchen when they killed him. Patsy walked out of the kitchen. And then I don't know how they disposed of his body, but that's what happened to this guy. Well, the word got back to their boss. The old grease fellow used to walk up and down the streets putting black cans on doors. And he wanted to know who these guys were, and they was afraid to go by Patsy's because he didn't know if Patsy had any more guys waiting for him. So he started continuing his operation around Grand and Ogden by putting black can, they'd have a black ink can put on people's doors, paper, and people would know what that meant. So happened to be one day my mother come home and there was one on our door. And she looked at it, she didn't know what the hell it meant. So when my father came home, she said, Joe, somebody left this thing on the door. Well, he went crazy. And and then he found out where this guy went for the boss. But it happened to be his underboss, the boss's underboss, goes for a haircut. And he caught him in the barbershop and he killed him in the barbershop. Then he thought to himself, this is what I was told. He's got to get the head of this guy, the head of the organization. So by this time, the head of that organization, the black hand, went in hiding. And he took his wife with him. And they found out that he was in a motel with his wife. They kicked down a door and they killed him in bed in front of his wife. They didn't hurt his wife. That was the end of the black hand. So then, soon after that, the outfit became, Al Capone and these guys. And they wanted my father to be involved. And he didn't want to be involved. He didn't want nothing to do with any type of organization. So that was basically the story of my father.
That's a great story. So that paved the way for the mob in Chicago, really.
Oh yeah, through all Chicago. See, there's a street in Chicago, and most of these guys that were connected to Al Capone lived on that street in Chicago. It was called Taylor Street. Mm-hmm. And that's where it's called the 42 gang come out of. That means there was 42 bosses, 42 guys that were made men. They come out of that area. Sam Giancana, Teets, Battaglia, I could go on and on, but I'm not, it's too long. And they all come out of that neighborhood. All old guys. Right now they've been over 100 and some years old. And Tony Arcardo, as a matter of fact, lived in the house in front of our house when I was a little child, maybe 4 or 5 years old. I didn't know that. He was probably not nobody back then. I like Sam Giancana. I would always refer to him as a man's man.
So you've had interactions with so many big and powerful mobsters. From
I could go on and on to the interaction I've had with mobsters. I could be here a week, and I'm not going to be here a week.
Just pick 2 or 3 that you think are particularly interesting.
Milwaukee Phil, I've Jack Cerrone, Willie Messina.
But tell me about some of the, like one or two of these individuals' personalities.
Personalities.
What made them unique and interesting?
Well, they were all. Each one of them were unique in their own way. You know, they all had tempers. Some of them were narcissistic, and some of them were just the nicest guys in the world. So you had to be careful how you treated each individual. You'd know what they were before you even got to meet them. So if you were half smart, you'd know how to handle them, you know, on a speaking arrangement.
Yeah.
Now, Milwaukee Phil, I always felt as though he growled when he talked. Sam DiStefano was a psychopath. I worked for him, too. I've seen him in action. Definitely out of his mind. Teets was all right. Teets was wild, too. Battaglia. James Tortorella, Turk. Like Turk. I used to steal with Turk. Turk became a boss, too. Joe Ferriola. We call him Joe Nago. Great guy. But you cross these guys, you're going to get fucking whacked.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it, you were going to get whacked. Like I said, I could go on all day. I met Tony Arcardo 2 times. I didn't talk to him on a level where he would be like my going buddy, hey buddy, I knew that. I respected this guy so much. Anything he'd done because he was a gentleman. He never talked down to people. He knew who I was when I was 18 years old. When I was 18 years old, this guy knew who I was.
Wow.
Shocked me. But that's how the word travels in that circle. When they know a guy's a tough guy or he's capable, they watch you. And one time Tony Arcardo told me, hey kid, I know who you are. And I looked at him. Was in a pancake house. And I said, who are you, sir? He said, my name is Anthony Arcardo. And I said, oh my God. It's a pleasure to meet you. I was like shocked, you know, because I heard about him. And at that particular time, Paul Rica was the boss of the outfit, all right? Paul Rica was the boss for about 10 years. So he said to me, I know all about you, Frankie. He said, you got a bad temper. He says, you could go a long way. He says, if you control your temper. Just some friendly advice. And by the way, who are your friends? He wanted to know who my friends were next to me. So I told him, and the guy's like, hello, Mr. Arcardo. And then the next time I had to stop, Willie Messina used to work for with Arcardo. He used to do things for Arcardo's house. Arcardo had a monkey. Tony Arcardo had a monkey. So poor Willie Messina was put in charge of the monkey. Because the monkey would tear up the basement.
Yeah, it's not
So one time I had to stop there and pick up something from Willie. And Willie was saying, this fucking monkeys, I kill him. He said, if I could get away with it. And then Tony Arcardo come home. And he looked at me and he waved. And I said, hello, Mr. Arcardo. Always Mr. Arcardo. He said, how's my monkey doing, Willie? Willie will shake his head like that. And I left. I said, I gotta get out of here. But yeah, I know. That's the only 2 times I talked to him, man.
Tell me about Larry Newman, who was somebody you also worked with.
Larry Newman. Strange that you say that. They talk about a lot of vicious guys in the outfit, and there were, like La Patria, his brother Jimmy. Vicious, crazy bastard. Scary guy. I think Larry Newman was worse than any one of the worst they had in the outfit. He was a Jewish guy. I met him in a penitentiary, Stateville Penitentiary. He was doing $1.25. That's 125 years for a triple murder. He did 11 and a half years on it. His father paid off the parole board. His father was very wealthy. So that's where I met Lefty. We worked in an assignment together, and they call it detention hospital. They refer to us guys as the goon squad, because we would do what the guards didn't have the balls to do. Get crazy people out of the cells and bring them to this detention hospital where all the psychos were. And that's who we watched. There was 8 of us. So we controlled that floor, that hospital unit with the psychos. And that's where I met him, and then Larry joined me in later years in Vegas.
But he was a killer that took it to another level. He was a killer, but he took it to another level, right?
I refer to Larry Newman as a serial killer. Yeah. He enjoyed killing. It didn't make a difference how he killed you. If he had to cut you up in pieces to get rid of you, he could do that. You know, I mean, the guy he's just an evil man. He was an evil man. He died in the penitentiary. He went back I put him back in the penitentiary because I testified him on a murder he committed, which he shouldn't have committed.
So eventually you ended up doing some, like you started off with some robberies, like bank and Brinks trucks and stuff like that.
Who was that?
You did. You.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you got to start somewhere, and I started out.
But you started out big. These were big.
Well, no, I got big quick. I had a car I bought with stocks and bonds that my father left. So it was an Oldsmobile, nice, 98. It was 55 or something, I don't know what it was. But it was an older car, it wasn't brand new, real old. So I was in the alley doing something by my house in Chicago, doing something, and this guy come walking down the alley. He had a fedora on like this, he was tall and skinny. We referred to him in later years as Mopey Jesus. That's what we named him, Mopey Jesus. His name was Bob Sprodak. And he stopped and he's talking to me, and he's got a wad of money, showing me his money. I said, where you get all that money? And he said, you want to make money like me? I'd show you. He said, I need a guy with a car. He says, I said, what do you do? He said, I stick up taverns. Stick up taverns, what did I know? Stick up taverns? Yeah. He says, I'm going to start doing banks. I said, I don't want to do banks. He said, you want to come with me? I said, I'll give it a try. But I wear these glasses. I had thick glasses now. He said, take them off. I said, I don't know. The places are dark at night. I'll give it a shot. So I met him, and we went on our first tavern heist. It was a fucking nightmare. It was so dark in there I couldn't see. He went in there and he blew off the bottles off the black bar, off the back end of the bar. Everybody hit the ground like they were supposed to. I'm yelling, it's dark, I can't see in there. I'm yelling to this image. It was a top coat and a hat. Get down, and I'm yelling, get down. And Bob said, who are you yelling at? And Jagoff don't want to lay down over there. Bob's laughing. He goes over and hits it. It was a coat rack. Oh, and the hat was set on there with a top coat. And it's dark in there. I'm telling you, I couldn't see it.
You just saw some of that.
Because I had bad vision. Yeah. So we laughed all the way to the car, and he said, I told him, if you ever tell anybody about this, I'll get you. I told him. And then from there, I didn't go with him too often because he was a little wild. And then I hooked up with 2 other guys, Richard Gorman and Paulie Shiro. And we start, and Gino Chiappetta. And we did a couple taverns. One was in Cicero, should have never went there, had a shootout. And it was a bad shootout. We got away, but one of the bullets went through the windshield and parted my partner's hair, Gino Chiappetta. Left the part down the center of his hair, legitimate. So he said, that's it, but on the way, we caught a rumble from the cops. Somewhere when we got closer to Chicago, we had changed the license plates and everything. And it became a shootout in the car, shooting back and forth, we got away. But in that shootout, we passed, Tony Splatcher was on a street, a side street where he lived. And he was in the car talking to a couple of his buddies. And we got in back of him because he was blocking the street. We were being chased. And, you know, I start blowing the horn, move out of the fucking way, we're yelling. I didn't know Tony was in the car. So Tony knew something was up, and he told him, move over there. These guys are, whoever they are, they're being chased. They pull over, we hit the car, drew a couple shots, got away. Got rid of the guns and everything. The car, seen Tony the following day. Was that you? I said, yeah. He said, what? I said, we stuck up some tavern in Cicero. He says, there's an easier way to make money. I said, oh. He said, bank rob. I said, I ain't sticking up no banks. No, you don't stick up no banks. He said, you grab the carrier. He said, they go in and they get money, and then they bring it back to the business. He said, I'm doing it right now with Turk. He was with Tortorella back then. That's a long time ago. So I says, he says, you could go with us now and then. I said, all right. So I got my two partners, the guys I mentioned previously, not Gino, Paulie and Richard Gorman.
Yeah.
So we just went on the bank rob and grabbed a few tellers. People are creatures of habit. They do the same damn thing every day if they're, you know, they go to the same stores, they go to the same banks, they go to the same businesses. So we found them. They were very easy. A couple of cars, two guys, stick them up in the car. We used to grab them right on the street walking out of the bank. You know, 20,000, 15,000. It's a lot of money back then, a lot of money.
Right.
Now it's like $20, 20,000, right? Mm-hmm. So we grabbed these people. So then we were getting bigger and bigger, making bigger and bigger money.
So then at some point you got into being a hitman.
What?
At some point you got into being a hitman for the Chicago.
Yeah.
Can you tell, like Sherwin Lisner was one of the people you...
Sherwin, Jerry, I call him Jerry Lisner. Sherman, that's what his name is. I call him Jerry. Mm-hmm. He was I don't know, what would you call a guy that would con your parents out of their life savings? He'd defraud them out of their life savings. And then they, you know, it's sad. So I didn't know it at the time, so this guy introduced him to me. And I talked to him, and I didn't like him. He was a weasel type guy, you know. But every time I bump into the guy, he'd always cozy up to me, you know, don't get the fuck out of here. So I'd have a drink, and he'd have his old lady with him, you know. Big, tall, blonde with a boob job. She was beastly. So that was as far as my friendship went with this guy. Now, he gets busted, I guess in Washington, D.C. Because if you go in front of a federal grand jury in Washington, D.C., that means that you probably did whatever you did wrong in Washington, D.C. I don't know he's going in front of a grand jury. I have no idea. One day, Tony calls me and he said, Joe Pignatelli wants to talk to us. He's got some important news to tell us. I said, what is it? He said, I couldn't talk to him on the phone. So we meet Joe Pignatelli. Now, Joe Pignatelli owned a restaurant in Las Vegas. This is where this took place. It was called Villa d'Este. The legitimate owner of the place was Sam Giancana, Mo. He owned the property and the business, and he did it. He put it up because he likes his own restaurants. That's the way he was. And Joe Pignatelli was his driver, so he put everything under Joe's name. Everything was under Joe's name. So Tony and I go and meet Joe Pig, and I call him Joe Pig. So he says, he's telling us, he says, there was a lawyer in there that has a client, and he said that his client was testifying on two guys in Nevada about a money laundering scheme, something like that. And he said, I asked him who the guys were, and he said, Frank Collada and Tony Splaccio. And the lawyer says, do you know him? And Joe said, no, I never heard of him. Joe said, I never heard of him. So he continued talking to the guy, and then the guy left, the lawyer left. So Joe said, he's testifying on you guys in front of a federal grand jury. So as we're walking out of the place, he don't stand in front of Joe Pig. So we walk out of the place, he said, you gotta kill him now. You gotta whack him. I said, I realize that. I said, but I can tell you this much, Stone. They're gonna call me in front of the grand jury before I get the opportunity. Sure as shit, the next day, knocking on my door, I open up the door. I knew they were there. I seen them through the peephole. They didn't hide it, you know. They put their thumb up, but I could know that. So I open up the door and they slap me in the chest with a subpoena to appear in front of a federal grand jury in D.C. So I said, okay. So now I got to get a lawyer out there in Virginia. So I go to the yellow pages and I get a lawyer. Like, I don't know no lawyers in Virginia. And I got lucky and got a good lawyer. He didn't charge me a lot of money. So I flew out there to meet the lawyer to go to court. First time I met him. They got some kind of an L or a train system that brings you right there. We go there and I go in a room, the strike force attorney's in there with a couple FBI agents. They're asking me questions, I'm lying. Lying like a son of a gun. They're satisfied with my lies. They put me up in front of the grand jury. I give them testimony, I lie. I created stories like you can't imagine. I don't know where it came from, but I created them. I get off the stand, they were all pleased. Now, maybe they were pleased because they knew different, they were gonna indict me for lying. I don't know. So when I get back to Vegas, Tony said, what'd you say? I said, I lied. What am I gonna say? I said, but you're the target. They ain't calling you, they call everybody else. They don't call the target, you know, unless they want to put you in jail for 18 months because they know you're gonna take the fifth. He said, well, now you gotta hurry up and kill this motherfucker, he said. So a week goes by, he said, what's the matter? Why is it taking so long? You want me to do it? I said, you ain't gonna do nothing no more, Tony. You know that, you're talking shit. I said, give me a little time. I said, I gotta get a guy. He said, don't bring Newman with you. Whatever you do, don't bring Newman. I said, why? He said, because if they got birds, dogs, cats, and kids, he'll kill everything in the house. I said, I don't want to bring him. So I did mention it to Newman. He said, I wish his wife's there, meaning Jerry's wife. I'll kill her. I said, you can't go. Tony don't want you there. So I got somebody else. And I killed the guy. I killed him in his home.
How'd that go down? I mean,
how'd that go down?
How do you actually kill somebody?
Well, the guy came to Vegas, the other hitman. And when he got to my place, I called they called Jerry Listener's house. And I said, we became friends now. All right, we weren't getting along up at that. I said, how you doing, Jerry? I said, I got somebody you could rip off. We could make some money on. Oh, come on over. I said, I ain't going over there unless you got if your wife's throwing kids, I ain't coming over there. Oh, no, they're not there. Nobody's there. You sure? Yeah, positive. Just happened to be at a work car. A car that you use to do crimes in. Fictitiously owned, you know.
Yeah.
Registered, I should say. Grabbed the car, put the guns in there. I can't wear gloves. One gun, police radio. I can't have a walkie-talkie. I can't have none of that. So the guy that's going to be in the car listens to the police radio. And he's got all this stuff that we're going to get rid of after I kill this listener guy. So I go up to the door, bing, bing, I knock a couple of times, I ring the bell and I try to wipe it with my palm because I can't wear gloves. Because you'd notice it right away. He opens up the door, I look to the right, I look up the stairway. I'm listening, I says, your wife ain't home with kids. I said, no. You sure? Yeah. Everything's cool? Yeah, because I don't want to talk. He turns around, boom, boom, boom. I shoot him in the back of the head. 5 times, real quick. Bing, 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 bing. He runs. He looks at me. Why are you doing that? I'm thinking this guy should be dead. I was told to kill this guy with a .22 and use F-loads from Tony. I did that. It was like shooting him in the head with a cap gun, pellet gun. He runs, I chase him. When he gets into the kitchen dining area, the garage door's there, leading into the garage. He hits the garage door button to open up the overhead door. I hear the door going up and I hit it and it stops the door. Stopped the door maybe 2 feet, 3 feet. Meanwhile, he's down on the ground between my legs. He's bleeding all over the place. And I got to finish him. There's no way I could leave him now.
Right.
There's just no way you could leave it. You're this far into it. So I ripped the cord out of the water machine. I tie it around his neck and I pull it and it breaks. I said, this guy is not supposed to die. So now I reach over and I grab, they had nice in them pegs, boards, they put them in the kitchen. I reached over and I grabbed it. He's still there. And just as I'm ready to come down with the knife, that little garage door opens. And I'm gonna, whoever it is, I gotta kill. I don't want it, but I got it. What am I gonna do? So I go like this, it's the guy, my partner.
Oh.
I go, Jesus. Scared the shit out of me. He said, I counted the shots. He says, you didn't come out. And I was worried. I said, you hear anything on the radio? No, nothing. He says, none of the neighbors called. He said, I brought extra bullets in. What the fuck? I couldn't believe it. So I take them, I take the shells up, put them in my pocket, reload it. He puts the pillow bag of his head, I put one in front, and I emptied the bullet out in the frontal part of his face. The bullet's out. Then I said, come on, we'll throw him in the pool. Why? He said, isn't that a little theatrical? I says, I got blood all over me. I says, I got this, from the gun, the powder. Come on, you too. Oh, come on. Drag him, throw him in the pool. We go into the pool up there next. The guy goes in the water and he sinks. We leave. That was it. Got rid of all the stuff. Came back to my place in our underwear. We rode back in our underwears. And then I took a shower. My hands to get that shit off from the pool, and in case there was any remnants of that gunpowder, you know.
Yeah.
So did he later. And then I drove him to the airport and he left.
So when you get an order from when you get an order from like Tony or from somebody like that to hit somebody,
Got to get an okay.
is it something you get paid for, or is it just something you just do?
Whenever you're ordered to do something, when I hear people say you get paid for it, that's bullshit. There's no paycheck for killing anybody. If they order you to kill somebody, whoever orders you, that's a boss, you know that they got the okay to tell you to do it. Mm-hmm. It goes in front of 2 or 3 bosses and they decide if it's right for you to kill whoever you're going to kill. Yeah. Or they come up to you and tell you, listen, you got to take care of so-and-so. You don't question it, you do it. If you don't, then you become the victim, mm-hmm. because they're not going to come to you if they didn't think you were going to say no. Yeah. So that's the process.
Have you ever
so when I killed Listener, I did ask Tony, did you get okay on this? He said yes, but he didn't. He lied. Wow. I found that out later.
Did you ever get convicted of murder?
Convicted of it?
Yeah.
I got immunity from prosecution.
Which is why you're able to talk here.
Yeah, I got immunity from prosecution, as long as I cooperated with the government.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
So I could freely talk about stuff like that, yeah. Or else I wouldn't talk about it. I'm not bragging about it, first of all. You don't brag about stuff like that. It's not nice, it's not right. But it's no different. Some people say, well, how could you compare it to? It's no different than being in the military and killing a lot of people that you don't even see.
You've been given an order.
You know, that's it, you know.
Yeah. Do you have like memories of these murders, or
no.
Are there psychological repercussions later on, or do you stay up at night or anything like that?
I do not have any repercussions in thought or memory about the people I killed, because I'd be in a straitjacket. Yeah. This is something you wash out of your mind. You have to do it, and that's something I've done. And if you can, that's the way it is. You have to get it out of your head.
I think it takes a certain personality type certain series of traits to be able to
Well,
do it.
you have to start with a little strong character, strong inside, a willpower to forget, to try and forget I done it. The only time I remember this nonsense is when I'm interviewed about it. Otherwise, I never talk about it, never brag about it.
Never comes up.
It's nothing to brag about.
So Tony Spilotro continues to move up, right?
Oh yeah, well, he was the boss out there.
Yeah.
In Vegas, Tony was the boss. I was his underboss.
Was he the boss in Chicago when he left, or?
He was the boss in Chicago, but if he went back there to be a boss, you got to remember, so if you're not in the state that you're a boss in, and you're in another state, you don't control that state anymore. They have another guy that'll take it over. If you come back, you may jump into that position again, whatever territory you had. It's so he couldn't be a boss in Chicago. Excuse me.
Yeah. So how did your relationship with Tony change over the years? Because you started off.
Tony was getting more paranoid every day.
Right.
And I used to see it as very obvious. And but yet he always was in the limelight. He managed to keep himself in the limelight. He'd always come to my restaurant. Caused me a lot of heat coming to the restaurant all the time. He caused me all this heat trying to do a legitimate business. So he started getting more paranoid. And I told him, you got to slow down, Tony. What do you mean? I said, I could see it's getting a hold of you, all this news and all of that. He's, well, they're lying. I said, of course they're lying on a lot of things. I said, ignore it. He said, that fucking RICO law. They can put you in jail for that RICO law. They can lie all they want. They put you in the newspaper. They show association, put you in jail for 20 years. Which he had a point, So I start noticing it more and more. Tony was falling into more involved with his family, his wife and his kid. He was becoming a guy that I felt didn't want to go to jail, wanted to become a family man, stay at home. He's not in Chicago now. Now his next step, I thought, would be leave Vegas, let somebody else come out here and be the boss, or try to leave Vegas. He wanted to start a new life. I know. Because he's saying, I'm fed up with this shit. I'm fed up with it. And he was happy to, have a son and a wife. So I always got strange feelings out of that when he was doing that. And I don't know what his plans were. I'll leave that up to your audience to figure it out. But I could see he was getting a little tired of fighting the police, the newspapers. And he wasn't going to run anywhere. He wasn't going to run away. In other words, disappear if he had a case going. He wouldn't do that because of his family. He loved them too much. He wasn't going to leave. Because if you leave and go to Hong Kong or wherever you run to, they'll get you. Eventually they'll get you. The feds will get you. Somewhere along the line they get. Don't forget, they got millions and millions of dollars they get from the taxpayers, I should say, to go after you. So he knew that. So Tony would never run, nor would his brother. That's the way it is.
And then eventually something came up where he put a hit out on you, right?
He did what?
There was a hit. You were in prison, but you heard a recording.
Yeah, I was pulled into an interview room. I was found guilty on the case, and I was pulled into an interview room by a couple agents, and they told me that there was a contract on my life, and I told them, get the fuck out of here, because I know the game. They play this game. They all play the game. Whether they're agents or regular locals, they have to do it. He said, my responsibility as a federal agent to inform you that there's a contract on your life. I said, get the fuck out of here. And I told the cops, send me down to my cell. So they bring me down, and I said, you're not bringing me to, they have me in a dormitory. You're putting me in a cell, he said, because there's a contract on in your life. What the fuck? Then the radio comes on, bring him back upstairs. I go back upstairs. They got this recorded. They want me to hear, listen to some message, listen to some wiretaps. So I listened to the wiretap, and I hear one guy on the other end and saying, "What's going on out there in Vegas?" And Tony said, "I can't control this guy. He's like a loose cannon," meaning me. So the agent says, "What did you hear? Who did you talk? Who are you here listening to?" He said, "I'm not ready to talk to you about that." So he stands there silent, and then the guy says, "Well, who's whacking people and all them robberies?" He says, "That other guy, I'm telling you. I can't control him," he says. "He's got a tough crew of guys that are with him. He says, every day I think they might take it over, take me out, you know." And the guy said, "Well, then you know what you got to do. He's going to make bond, isn't he?" He says, "Yeah, he'll get an appeal bond." He says, "Then you got to clean your dirty laundry." Well, fuck. Let me tell you something. I've had 39 friends in my lifetime, maybe more, that were killed by the outfit. I didn't want to be 39 or 40. So I went back down to the cell. I thought about it overnight. Got up in the morning and I told him, "Get a hold of that agent that was there. I want to just get a hold of that agent. I want to talk to him."
But this is the recording was Tony,
Yeah, it was Tony.
and this is somebody that you've been tight with for how long?
We were 12 years old. I don't know how many years. I was 48 or 49 when I rolled, I think.
But you were very close.
Oh, when I heard them say that, my eyes started watering, you know, 'cause it broke my heart. I don't give a shit about jail. Jail is just an inconvenience. Guys like us make it in there. It's not someplace you look to go to or relish the thought, "Oh, I can't wait to go." If you could avoid it, of course you're going to avoid it. But to hear this guy talk about wanting to kill me, or having to kill me, and taking all the weight off himself and pushing it on me, it bothered me, it troubled me deeply. But it took a lot for me to become a witness. I wasn't raised this way. It took me 25 years to get over the fact that I was a witness. 25 years I hated myself. 25, I am bullshitting nobody. But then actually I'm a religious guy now, I really am. And all these things are behind me. And I did the right thing. He was dishonorable to me. I would have probably got killed in jail or on the streets.
Right, either way.
I made the right choice. It was difficult for me to also become a witness because of my mother and my family, my sister and brother. So, you know, I don't want them to be disgraced. They'd have to live with that because they're still living in that area, or were living in that area. But time goes by and time heals all.
Yeah.
It does. 25 years later, I could go back to that city. I was back there recently. I could go anywhere I want. Nobody bothers me. They all understand. They understand why I roll. They didn't like it at first. They were very mad. They said, "Why would he do that?" Meaning me. Somebody had to fuck him around pretty good for him to do that, because he's a stand-up guy. They're referring to me. What the fuck did they refer to Tony as the little guy? What did that little guy do to him? They were starting to dislike Tony a lot because of his brother, the two of them. And that's it.
Yeah, well, that's the ultimate fuck around, isn't it?
I can't hear you.
That's the ultimate fuck around, isn't it? Somebody's fucking, they're trying to kill you.
Yeah, you know, I mean, come on. You know, I mean, like I said, 39, 40 guys I know were whacked, thinking, well, I'm gonna be all right. They ain't gonna do it to me. They like me too much. Your best friend brings you to the gallows. Boom. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay?
So Tony, what happened to him eventually? What happened to Tony eventually?
Tony was eventually, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Eventually, Tony was murdered. And I got a call. I was in the witness protection program. An FBI guy, his name was Dennis Arnley. He said to me, "Tony and his brother Michael disappeared." He said, "Where did they run to?" I said, "They didn't run anywhere." He said, "How do you know that?" I said, I know Tony. They're dead. He said, I'm telling you they're dead. Tony's not going to run. I'm on the telephone. I'm in Mobile, Alabama. His agent's calling me from Vegas.
That's where your witness protection.
Well, that was one of the first spots I went.
Yeah.
And he says, well, I'll get back to you in a couple of days. A couple of days later, he didn't have to get back to me. It was on the news that they discovered the bodies in the cornfield. And he said, where do you suppose they were killed? They have dust in their lungs. I said, they weren't killed in no cornfield. I said, because they got dust in their lungs. Probably when they threw them in there, that dirt flew up in their mouth. I said, they were killed in either Cicero or Bensonville. Eventually you'll find out. And I was right. They were killed in Bensonville in a basement. He said, well, they were beaten to death. That tells you right then and there. It was in a residential area. I'm telling his agent this. It was residential. They can't use a gun. They could use knives. They could choke them. They could kick them. They could beat them. He said, well, there was no physical marks other than bruises all over their faces and body. Then they beat them with the metal bats, or they kicked them, or they punched them, whatever. But they beat them to death.
So when it hit his...
I didn't like the idea of that, but I didn't like, it bothered me. It really bothered me that they were killed like that fashion. But I didn't understand why. Because they couldn't shoot them.
So when a hit is put out on somebody, is it typically guns, knives, baseball bats?
Whatever you choose to do. Whatever it calls for in that area.
Whatever works.
Yeah, if you choose to, you could use a 45, use a 45, use a 22, use a 22. You gotta use a knife, you gotta use a knife. Whatever the situation calls for.
Yeah.
Or you gotta use dynamite, use dynamite. Rig a car up, whatever it is.
So what do you think I'm trying to get a handle on the psychological traits of somebody that has a life of crime as opposed to, like, say, just a regular law-abiding citizen.
Making him up. Yeah. You know, I respect people that, and I'm not bullshitting any of yous right now. I respect a man that works from 9 to 5. They make good money, they save money. This is the life they choose to live, and God bless them for it. I choose the life I wanted to live is because I found it glamorous. I did find out that money don't last long, because it's not easy come either, but I'm gonna use that term. Easy come, easy go. You gotta remember, we're up 24 hours a day, thinking and robbing. Business guy, or a guy that works for a living, he's sleeping 8, 9 hours. We're out there spending money. So most guys that were in the outfit died broke, died busted. I'm not even gonna go into that list. There's only a few that had a lot of money at the end. Only a few. You spend money, you got too many hours. I respect the working class people a lot. Now, some of these white collar crimes, another story. Biggest crooks in the world. Let's go to Washington, D.C.
Yeah. I
don't want to get into politics, but they're all criminals. Republicans and Democrats alike. Big liars. All of them. We were saints compared to these people. The only thing is they didn't kill people. But they killed them another way.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Frank.
I thought I'd try that.
Frank, thank you very much for talking to me.
No problem.